We'll start with Mr. Stephen Okello, obviously. Obviously, but in no order after that. Again, please join me in welcoming Stephen. It's these few times that we call him Stephen. But in the other meeting, we have Mr. Stephen Okello. So Stephen, you're very welcome again. Again, that's our ED, the National NGO Bureau. Thank you so much, Mr. Okello, for always attending such dialogues. We don't take that for granted. Mr. Okello, you have heard from the trust report. We shall call it the trust report. And I saw you shaking your head, and at one point you said, wow. When I said it was objective, you smiled. Sometimes that smile, I don't know what that smile means, but you smiled. But I also know that we have also given you some guidelines to talk to, some points to talk to. So as you speak, there are many questions around the NGO Bureau. I know that conversation today is the rationalization, that whole word. And there are already questions in the room around what is the future of NGOs, what's the future of renewal of permits, what is the future of all that. So Stephen, you have been at this game, in this space for quite some time. You've been with us in the regional engagements. You were there at the launch. You have seen the trends in terms of NGO compliance. What, in your view, how do you see this compliance thing going? Are we improving as NGO, as a sector? What challenges are you seeing both from our side as those who are being regulated, but also what challenges are you experiencing? But what are the opportunities, including the issues that were raised in relation to trust? So please join me in welcoming Stephen yet again with a clap. Great. Stephen, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Sheila. Let me start by thanking DPI for organizing this event, because it's a very good opportunity to have all the stakeholders in the room to discuss all these issues. But also I want to thank Dr. James and the team for the survey. I listened to everything he was saying, as you said, attentively. And I think it is a very spot-on exercise that they carried on. But of course, it's good that he said they will conclude after listening to also the other side that they're going to pick from this room. So that gives it a more balanced angle. Because if they had already concluded without listening to us, then we would say, okay, there's still something missing. So let me start from the general angle you asked from. What is the compliance like? Before 2016, we had a compliance level that was at around 62.8% of NGOs in this country. That meant that NGOs were not compliant. And that is something that actually should have worried everyone at that time. But from 2016, when the NGO Act came into play, and to date, the compliance level has risen from 26.8% to now 62.4%. And I think that is a very commendable, steady rise. And of course, there are so many factors coming into play here. One of it that, of course, also helped contribute, all of you remember that in 2019, there was a verification and validation exercise for all NGOs in this country. And I remember when we started it, we first had an internal exercise to get to know how many NGOs in this country. According to our register at that time, it showed us that there were 14,207 NGOs, but we conducted an internal exercise to find out how many NGOs had valid permits in this country. We found that 3,811 NGOs only had valid permits. It meant the rest did not have valid permits. Now, after that, we moved to an online exercise that all NGOs in this country participated in, where it was more of a census, that if you're out there, please just declare you're out there and you let us know. By the time we finished that exercise, only 2,113 NGOs were able to say we're out here. And all of you are aware that from that day onwards up to now, every Monday morning, we publish a list of the NGOs operating this country. And from 2019 to now, it has helped us track a lot of things and see the improvement. And that's how we have slowly seen that from 26.8%, the compliance levels have risen now to 62.4%. And I think that is a good direction we are going. We are hoping that after a few years from now, if we can see 80, 90, I don't know whether we can clock 100, but somewhere it's very clear that compliance levels are improving. Now, what are some of the key compliance areas we look at as NGO Bureau? The first one, of course, is that every NGO in this country must be a body corporate, meaning you should have been incorporated. Whether you start within the country or you're coming from out, you should already be incorporated. The other one is that you should be registered. There's only one national register for NGOs in this country. That means you should appear on that register. The other one is that you must have a valid permit, meaning that you can apply for a period not more than 5 years. Once that period is done, you can always come back and renew. The other one is that you should come back and renew. And those are some of those obligations. I had James trying to emphasize the 2 million somewhere. I knew where he was speaking it from. The law says that 6 months before expiry of your permit, you are supposed to apply for renewal. Should your permit expire before applying for renewal, then you are subjected to a fine of 2 million for every month of default. And so many NGOs have fallen victim to that. But of course, another legal obligation that NGOs must comply with is that you are supposed to apply for review in case you have any changes. Like if you decided to change your objectives, change area of operation, any changes that occur, you need to apply for review and let the Bureau know. Or it's a way of notifying the Bureau. But so many organizations will change over area of operation, change objectives, change so many things, but do not notify the Bureau. So those are some of the legal obligations. But also others are that you are supposed to maintain a very high standard of governance, transparency, and accountability. The other one is that also, in case you ever decide to close at any one point, don't just inform only your landlord, then go home. You're supposed to also follow a process whereby you formally close and the NGO Bureau can remove you from the register. But also a key one is that every end of a year you must file returns with the Bureau. And those are just a few legal obligations that I've pointed out that are required that every NGO must comply with. But also, we also have some of the challenges which you requested me to talk about. What are the challenges that the NGO Bureau is seeing when it comes to compliance? The first one, which is affecting so many NGOs, is the mindset and the motive at the point of forming an organization. Why are people forming organizations? Do they even appreciate what they're getting themselves into? Do they know this regulatory framework that is in place? Do they know all these legal obligations? We see a lot of people driven by passion. Others are driven because they want to survive. Others, it's a job they want to create for themselves. Others, it's a financial gain. But amidst all the motivations and the mindset you have why you want to form an NGO, do you appreciate all this regulatory framework you're getting into? So many NGOs do not pay attention to that. What they do is that they decide they want to form an NGO, get a lawyer to do all the paperwork for them. All they want to see is just bring us a permit from the Bureau, bring us a certificate from the Bureau, bring us incorporation certificate from URSV. The rest they do not mind about. But you see, at that point, it's easy. But as time goes on, the legal obligations start to catch up with you. Whereby, at one point, you're supposed to apply for renewal. You don't even know you should apply for renewal. You're going to continue operating normally. So that level of also ignorance and lack of appreciation, but also the mindset of why you are forming and where you want to go at the end of the day, does not come out clearly when people get into the arena. But of course, the other thing which I had in the opening remarks, capacity. So many people form of these organizations, but the question is, what kind of people do you put in these organizations? starting from the members. If you're a membership organization, who are the people you're putting as your members so that they can guide the organization to be compliant? Who are the staff that you're recruiting who can help with the compliance issues? Who are the people you're putting on your board who are going to ensure that the organization is compliant? So these are some of the compliance issues that are key. But of course, another area which is also a challenge is that a number of NGOs or organizations out there operating think that the responsibility of compliance is with the head, let me say the executive director. Meaning that it's only the ED to know when our permit is going to expire. Now the ED also gets carried away. Those are not things to look at all the time. Now a number of NGOs don't have a compliance officer. Someone who is recruited or has a job description that makes them even assess risk levels, compliance issues within the organization. At the end of the day, the organization gets carried away into operations. And one day when they wake up, they already have a 4 years default. And that is almost a fine of 24 million per year times 4. Now, at the end of the day, you want to go and start blaming the bureau, and yet you had 6 months before its expiry to actually do the right thing. So there are so many factors at play, right from the point of forming it, capacity issues, not having the right people in place to ensure that you're doing the right thing. But of course, also, a number of organizations don't have automated systems that can keep reminding them and telling them, okay, your permit's about to expire. So many issues. So at the end of the day, you find that you're running into trouble because all your systems are manual and there's nothing to remind you. Now, some of the recommendations you have asked me to actually touch on is that first, we appreciate that so many stakeholders are coming on board to sensitize organizations. That is something good, which of course is yielding results. That's why we see compliance levels are growing up. That's why you see NGO Bureau, DPI, so many entities out there in the field trying to build the capacity of so many actors so that everyone's up on board. But as the sensitization goes on, for both the NGOs, district authorities, and all stakeholders, NGOs need to start investing in capacity building too. They need to build the capacity of their staff, their board, and their members too. Because if you have people who are part of an AGM, who are taking decisions, they need to have a thorough appreciation of what their expectations are and what kind of questions they can ask, how they can hold the organization accountable because they actually report to them. So it's important that the capacity building is done at all these levels. But also, as I've already hinted, it's important that organizations recruit compliance officers. Because if you don't have a compliance officer and you think an ED is going to be the one to remember each and everything, then you are going to always find yourself on the other side of the different laws that are actually in place. So I think sensitization, compliance, and more capacity building is needed. But also automation is very key for all the entities so that they are actually having systems that are helping them in so many ways. Now, you also requested I touch on what James had presented. I think overall, as I've said, the issues he raised are really some of the issues we have also seen as we conduct reflection meetings out there. I wanted mainly to emphasize, I think, 2 or 3 areas. The first one, of course, he said that there's a feeling that NGO Bureau sends out security officials to either go and bulldoze them or intimidate them in a way. I just want to say that is not true. We are not that kind of regulator. We are not even only a regulator, but also we are an enabler. If you see the spirit in the law, if you see the way the current NGO Bureau operates, we are there to support the sector grow. We are not there to also tell you, because I'll tell you that in 2019, after we concluded this exercise, the numbers risen from the 2,000, and as we talk now, the number is close to 6,000 NGOs. Now that means that the environment is one that attracts organizations to continue growing. What we did in 2009 was just to weed out those that quietly closed. But you see that there's a steady rise. So the NGO Bureau is an enabler of the sector also. And so there is no reason why NGO Bureau would send security people to either go and bulldoze or else intimidate an NGO at the end of the day. But something I wanted to emphasize and spend more time on is the dangerous orphan that he talked about. I will tell you that, and he really gave a good description that government put in place an entity, structures that are there, but there's a lot that needs to be done. And I fully agree that from some of our engagements with all the stakeholders in the field, we find that we need to actually design a special project for this dangerous orphan. We have structures there that if you go to some districts, you actually find a number of them are also in a comfort zone and are using even the old law, things that are not current. And that means that some of the things they picked in their survey are actually correct. There are areas that need to be urgently addressed. The first one, even before you give them the money, is to build the capacity. You need the right people sitting. They will understand what an NGO is, the legal obligations and all this. Because if you start by giving them the money as is being requested, you are still going to give money to an individual who does, or a committee that does not understand what is the right thing they should be doing. All the things he raised, that the fairness, the openness, are things that need to be at play. Are you listening to these NGOs? Are you appreciating why they're there? Or why they are there to even complement the government, all the areas? So first thing is, can we really invest in the capacity building of these DNMCs? But apart from capacity building, there's also operationalization. I had Dr. James mainly focus about DNMCs. But there's a bigger community that he did not touch on, and how I wish he would tell us whether it is in some other report. There's also the SNMCs, Sub-County NGO Monitoring Committee. For me, actually, before even you talk about the DNMCs, start with the SNMCs. Because those are the committees that were actually established to be in every sub-county. Now, the fact that the work of each and every NGO and CBO in this country ends up in a sub-county somewhere, you need this SNMC first operational. Now, we are seeing that the DNMCs are operational, but they are struggling in a way. But can we start this whole project with the SNMCs? Once the SNMCs have the right capacity and are doing the right thing, then definitely expect the DNMCs to also gradually pick up everything that's coming up. And then from the DNMCs, it will reach the Bureau. Now, that's the first bit, that build the capacity and operationalize the SNMCs and the DNMCs. The other one, he correctly put it, funding is a challenge. Each time we go out in a meeting and we are talking to all the DNMCs and district officials, first thing they ask us is money. And yet, I will tell you that the spirit of establishing these DNMCs, first by cabinet in 2010, when they were passing the policy, was that do not recruit anyone to be in those committees. Can you use individuals who are in those districts, who already paid, already have a salary, and if possible, who sit almost in the same area? If we listed the membership of the DNMC, you'll be shocked that go to a district, almost all of them sit within the same arena. And the spirit of cabinet at that time was for them to even call a meeting. Cost them almost nothing. They have a hall somewhere. They just have to mobilize, go and sit in a room, consider these applications. But you see now there's this whole spirit of allowances. Before we sit and do anything, please, you need to first pay us the allowances. Now I think if we could go back to the original spirit of cabinet and also request the accounting officers at district, who are the chairpersons, the cows, to help us with this, that please, first of all, talk to these committees, and just as Dr. James brought it out, NGO Bureau is counting on them. If they are not working, you know that there's already a gap being created. People are going to end up accumulating fines because they're either waiting for a committee to sit, and at the end of the day, they are going to try to explain to the Bureau, and yet the Bureau is having a gap between when these committees should be up and running and them doing the right thing. But overall, much as the spirit was that they don't need the money, the financial implications is zero. They already don't. I think also that to some extent, some money must be provided. They may need a bottle of water in their meetings. They may need to have lunch if the meeting stretch. They may need to go to the field. They need at least some money for some fuel to go to the field. So it's important that let also some budget be appropriated to them. Now, originally, they kept looking at the bureau, saying, NGO Bureau, give us the money. But you see also the bureau is also struggling to get its own ceiling raised so that they have adequate resources. So it's important that the country as a whole, Parliament, then also together with the Minister of Finance, if possible, the fact that these are well-constituted entities, both in a policy and an act of Parliament, should appropriate the money to ensure that these committees have the right funding. But also apart from that level, the districts themselves need to also budget for these committees. I'm sure districts have budgets. But also you see that districts will also say they don't have the resources. Just like NGO Bureau will say, we cannot also pick money to give you at the district level. So it's important that at the end of the day, these committees should also be adequately funded. Not only at the district, but also sub-county levels. So that at the end of the day, they have the resources in play. So that we don't have the frustrations people are complaining about and all these lists. All those things that Dr. James raised are all results of lack of those two things. Lack of the capacity building, lack of giving them resources. Because if you don't give them the money and you're pressurizing them that you want to go and submit the bureau, they will then tell you, give us the money, because we need to either go and see where your offices are. We need to get some water to have in the meeting. So it's a very interesting arena that so many things have to be put in place. But everything that Dr. James brought out, we are going to take note of them. We had already picked a number of them, but we would love to see the final report so that it helps us in so many ways. Remember that there is also a process of reviewing the current policy and act. A document like this would inform a lot of things. Some of the discussions would be that, was establishing the SNMCs and DNMCs a mistake? Did we think through very well? Have we created a structure that, as he said now, may turn into a monster from another angle? So it's important that if you have a report like that, that comes at a good time when you are reviewing these documents, the better. The good thing also is that the process of reviewing this policy and act was halted a bit because of the rationalization process, where the act was still undergoing some processes. So we hope that by the time the whole rationalization is done, and we go back to look at those documents, this report will be out. And I can tell you that it's going to feed a lot into that document, so that by the time we go to Cabinet or Parliament, we have all those things that are picked right from the grassroots. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you so much for making us wiser. Stephen, on that issue of rationalization, there's been so much talk around NGOs. Actually, in this room, somebody was telling me, hey, Sheila, next year they are not going to allow even NGOs to register. Even those permits that are expiring, no renewal with this rationalization. What are the real implications? I know you're reflecting on this.
Sheila, all I can say is that there's a process still ongoing. It's not concluded. So it would be unfair for me to start giving those positions when there is a law that has been sent to the president. He's yet to assent to it. There are so many things that are yet to come out. It's important that we need to have that conversation when the final document is out from the president. Because I may sit here and talk right now, then a totally different document comes out. So I would think that let's seize that conversation for now. Once that document is out, we shall come back and have that conversation. Thank you.
Hey, you see diplomacy. That is Stephen. But Stephen, thank you very much. And that's important, and we shall be really on the lookout. So thank you again, Stephen. I'll turn the chair now to Godwin, to Mr. Gumisiriza. KCCA. Somebody said, Do you get those SMSs on your phone? Property tax, now the valuation, now the drones. I hear KCCA has drones. They even just see your building there and then they see that one, 6 million per year. Like, when did they come to now evaluate my building? So, Godwin, we have all these perceptions, which James has in his report, about KCCA, about the municipalities, about, all that. But what are the real obligations for NGOs in terms of compliance with regards to KCCA? And what challenges are you seeing that we are facing as NGOs, but you are also facing as regulators?
Thank you, Shira, and thank you, my brother Stephen, senior brother at that. Is it afternoon or still morning? Good morning, colleagues. Straight to the point. What are the obligations of KCCA when it comes to the NGO monitoring and compliance issues? I will not go into the legal gymnastics, but we know that we have the NGO Act, we have the NGO regulations that guide us. At one time, I will remind you, when we were in the regional meeting for a discussion like this, I did confess that I was one of the key people that were resisting to implement some of the things that we are doing, until we were guided by Stephen, and I will continue thanking you so much. As he has rightly put, I will not repeat, but I will look at what do we do as KCCA. What is the process? But I want to first put a disclaimer that the work we are doing as NGO monitoring committee is not charged any coin, unlike the NGO bureau that charges fines, that charges fees for registration. Us as KCCA, we are required to monitor NGOs and recommend them for registration or the renewal of the registration, and also sign an MOU with the NGOs before we can recommend. So the NGO bureau expects two things from KCCA. One, the MOU between KCCA and the NGO, as well as the recommendation letter. But there is a process. We just don't receive an NGO application and then we just sign an MOU and issue a recommendation letter. Once an application has been received from the NGO, first of all, at a division level, the division handles the NGOs that operate within a particular division. Just one division. For instance, if the NGO is operating in Makinde division and doesn't cross to any other division, the committee at Makinde division is obliged to attend to that NGO and issue a recommendation letter to the NGO bureau as well as the MOU. But should the NGO's activities cross from one division to the other, or even an NGO is based in Kampala, either conducting activities in Kampala but also outside Kampala, or even based in Kampala, doesn't have any activities, it has activities outside Kampala, but as long as it is based in Kampala, it is still required to come to KCCA, and that NGO now comes to City Hall, or what we call at the authority level. So you can imagine the number of NGOs that we handle, because most of the NGOs are at least based in Kampala, a good number. On a daily basis, we receive quite a number of applications at division and at authority level. As he rightly put, we do not have any additional resources in terms of manpower to do this work. It is using what is existing. So once we receive the application, we go through the desk appraisal of the application to see whether all the required documents that the NGO bureau expects are on file, first of all. And once we are done with that, we also have to do a field appraisal to establish whether this NGO really exists or it is a briefcase NGO. And I can tell you in some cases, we find briefcase NGOs. You find that the NGO doesn't exist on ground. So we have to make sure that we first visit, and even if we find that the NGO is there, we also go through several other things of compliance. For instance, policy compliance. The things that they are doing, are they in line, are the objectives in line with the, for instance, the NDP, KCCA strategic plan, and other government frameworks. Then we also look at the visibility, because some NGOs are hidden. And I want to share with you the real experience. Our biggest challenge comes from the faith-based organizations, or what we can say, without fear or favor, churches, who are a number in Kampala, just like they are in other districts. And most of them, they register as NGOs. Sometimes you struggle to find out where these ones are. Some of them are. Or to find out what they are doing, whether they're in compliance with government policies. They don't even understand. Then you take them through what that one is. So you have to go on ground, check whether they are visible. Sometimes they don't have the signpost. They don't have. Some of them, by the way, even the phone numbers they put, you call, they are not available. All those cause delay. Then we also check for internal checks and balances. We find out whether they have, for instance, boards, and are the boards functional? Do they hold AGMs? Do they have documents to show that these ones sit? Then we also go and look at accountability issues. Do they have audited reports? And by the way, they are even supposed to be filing with us, to be submitting to us periodic reports, annual reports, their work plans, their audited reports, so that we are able to see that this NGO is doing the work. We are supposed, beyond actually recommending them, we are supposed even to monitor what they are doing on a daily. What are they doing? Then we also look at issues to do with the certificates of incorporation for those that are going to register for the first time. But even those that are renewing, we want to make sure that their previous certificate is on file, because they might say they want to renew when actually they have never registered. We also ensure they use relevant forms when they're going to register, so that they don't use irrelevant ones and then they get issues. But even the relevant ones, do they provide the information that the NGO Bureau actually wants before we recommend them? Because you might find, in most cases, there are some areas that they skip. If I will give an example, source of funding, budget for your annual budget, and you find that this information they have skipped. If you also are not keen, you will find that maybe the identification of at least two people who are local residents here, who are nationals here, who are promoting the NGO, they are not providing their details. So we make sure we check all that. After we have checked all that, now the NGO monitoring committee sits to review and take a decision. Remember, this NGO monitoring committee is composed, as per the law, of people that have very busy offices. So they came up with a schedule and say, at first, sit once a month, until we discovered that once a month was not enough, twice a month. But I can tell you, for to meet the demand, maybe every week we should be meeting to consider, amidst other engaging activities that you have. So, it takes time, is the point I'm trying to explain. An NGO thinks that they will come to KCCA in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks, they will get a recommendation. I am very sure that even before I leave here, one of the questions that must be raised, and has been raised everywhere, the delay. And what causes the delay is what I'm explaining. It is a process for you to get this. And if I were to recommend, what do you do to make sure that you avoid the delay? One, don't wait for your permit to expire then you submit. Start early because it is a very long process. After all, even the application is addressed to, some addressed to the executive director, some addressed to the chairperson of the NGO monitoring committee. By the time it comes through all the levels until we are to start working on it, you might find you are spending 1 or 2 weeks' time, depending. And as I have explained, these processes, to go through them and finish on time, you need to have really good time because we just don't rush. But also remember, with compliance, there are several other issues. On the NGO monitoring committee, as per law, we have security represented. Sometimes security requires that I want to first make sure that I review this file. That will also take another process for you to wait and get the feedback. So my recommendation would be that the NGOs start early so that we can go through the processes and get the report out. And once the committee approves, then we have a minute. We start a second phase after the committee has approved, signing the MOU now, which has legal issues. You will draft the MOU to capture the obligations of the two parties and make sure that the two parties are in agreement. That will also take some back and forth reviews. Once that is done, then you have to submit it to our legal experts to go through it, and they may also come up with some recommendations, change here, work on this. That takes time. And unfortunately, as James did mention, you don't do always people who would exploit certain challenges that you are going through. Time constraint. Someone really wants this. They are telling you, NGO Bureau is going to charge us 2 million. I want the registration, the renewal very fast. You never know. Some people might say, I can quicken the process. Some people have mentioned that they have fallen that, but I have mentioned that all this that we are doing, we don't charge anything. The other challenge, if I may share, is that, as Stephen did mention, the issues of facilitating the committee. I don't want to repeat what he has said, but let me add that my experience and our experience as KCCA, our major challenge is transport to the field to do all this. Otherwise, you risk someone sitting in the office and issuing a recommendation when actually the NGO does not exist. So our major challenge is transport, because the assumption was that you are going to use what is existing in terms of resources, the funds and the personnel. He did mention that districts should budget, but districts have what we call unfunded priorities. This is one of them. What you call a dangerous orphan, I will call a very important and vulnerable orphan, not dangerous. Is always a non-funded activity. For us as KCCA, we managed to succeed in getting funding last financial year, but this year we did not. But we'll keep struggling until we can be able to get to that level. The last thing I want to mention is that the NGOs are supposed to have a representative on the NGO monitoring committee, which is a very critical issue, and it is in the law. And I would recommend that the NGOs should also think about how do they coordinate themselves. If I wanted that representative, how can I quickly get that representative? Where do I go? I don't have the funds to call all the NGOs, put them at Serena like you are here, and say, choose among us your representative. So what we did as KCCA innovatively, we asked the NGO forum to help us in that exercise. They underwent the exercise and came up with a recommendation and said, you can appoint so-and-so to be on the committee. The person was written to, and the person declined. So we went back to square one. As I talk, we don't have a representative of the NGOs on the committee, which is a critical issue. And I request that NGOs here, if you can take it up, and we see, especially those that work within Kampala, that this is closed. I want to stop at that, and I thank you, Shia, and the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Godwin. Please appreciate Godwin. Godwin, so at what point should we start complaining on this issue of delay? Have you set some standard even for yourself where you say, you know what, at least in a month's time, this recommendation should be out? At what point should NGOs start to become jittery on the question of delay?
Thank you very much, Shira. We, as I said, targeted to have 2 meetings a month, expecting that if we receive a file, an application, we should be able to work on it in a month's time. But in most cases, there are challenges beyond our level. For instance, during that month, you didn't have a vehicle for the officers to visit and come up with a report. But in addition, you will find that, as I have said, security piqued interest and they are vetting these NGOs that applied. You don't have any control. It's a matter of cross-checking how far they have gone. Before I walked in here, an NGO was following up, and I was telling them, give me some time. But what I didn't tell them, I'm waiting for a report from ISO. So some of those things are beyond our control. Maybe the last recommendation I should have made and I can make now, maybe the NGO Bureau should also think about putting in consideration what Stephen mentioned, assuming whatever document comes out in future, maybe we should have some periodic discussions with the regulators, maybe coordinated by the NGO Bureau, in my opinion, to look at some of these things, so that the NGO Bureau calls us, for instance, KCCA calls you, ISO calls you, URA, and all the rest, and discuss some of these things and come up with strategic ways of addressing them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godwin. I think you're re-emphasizing that point on interagency collaboration that Dr. Nkobi also picked up in his report. But thank you very much for your time. I know you're also, running against time, so we'll try and get some questions for you before you actually leave. I would like to turn now to Patricia. How are you, Patricia? Get Godwin's. How are you, Patricia?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. Patricia is the manager, documents, registration, and licensing. Is that it? Yes. That's Patricia from URSB. And we must have all interacted with Patricia or Patricia, another Patricia's Patricia, or Patricia behind Patricia, somebody, when we are filing the online system and so on. Patricia, we've been in this space for some time. You've interacted with the NGOs here, some of them. What is your experience now in terms of compliance, with legal compliance, particularly with URSB? How are we faring? James also mentioned in his report this issue of names. Now, that issue of names has really become controversial. Even the last, Stephen, you remember when we were launching, the issue of names came up. Any name, initiative, they will ask you, what do you want to initiate? That name is not good. You go back. Any name, change. What are you changing? Any name, foundation, what foundation are you founding? So every name becomes difficult. And the thing is, for people who have been asked to change names, you know what it means. You've had this name, it's your brand. You have to go back to point zero. What is in the name, Patricia? Please join me in welcoming Patricia. Patricia, in trend, how are we faring? But also, what is in that issue of name?
Okay, thank you. The compliance of the NGOs is low, but from last year, since we began the online, the data update, it's improving. I think it's steadily growing. Just to give a bit of background to those who might not know how we come into this space. NGOs in Uganda are incorporated as companies limited by guarantee, as one of the types of the companies under the Companies Act. And all these companies have obligations, right from incorporation to their operations. Companies are required to file returns every year. And then these companies have meetings, the board meetings, the AGMs, and the different operational matters. Probably you have a meeting agreeing to open up a bank account with Bank X. You have a meeting to appoint someone a signatory to your account. You have a meeting admitting new members. All these decisions must be filed with the Register of Companies. Now, on the name issues, a name is very important to anyone who's opening up any company, because we're aware of the importance of your name to your vision, to your dreams and everything. But you need to comply with the law. Now, I'll just give you like basic things. Use of Uganda national, unless you have a recommendation from the line ministry. Let's say you're into health, you're into communities. If you're dealing with communities, it's Ministry of Gender. If you're into probably ICT and everything you get from the line ministry, it really depends on what you're doing. And then anything that is a government mandate. We have had a situation where someone was looking at labor export, and they said they were the labor export something, making it seem like it's part of Ministry of Gender. That we cannot pass. And then anything that is illegal under any laws of Uganda, because the Companies Act is clear. A company is set up to do lawful activities. Now, on the names, of course, for companies and limited by guarantee, the common words used are foundation, initiative, association, network, forum, and all. But to demystify this, I think sometime last month we attended an NGO forum. It came up again, and also the feedback from our regional offices on the name. We are coming up with guidelines so that you can be able to know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And with our online business registration system, it was rolled out on 9th December 2022. It enables you to access our services from the comfort of your home. Within that system, if it's a name reservation, for example, and you're not satisfied, or you think the reason for rejection is not valid, you have an option to escalate. So if you escalate this name, it goes to the managers, to the directors to review. So that mechanism is there. So please don't suffer in silence. You have an opportunity to raise your issues. And in James's report, he mentioned something about payment. Your payment is valid until you get a name. So please don't pay again. So if your name is queried, in that system you can put up to 3 names, option in order of preference. We have had situations where someone puts, it's 1, 2, 3. So number 1 is reserved, and the person says, no, I wanted number 3. Put what you want first in order of preference, so that if we look at option 1, it doesn't pass. We'll look at, of course, we'll give you what is similar, and then we look at option 2, and then 3. If you're not satisfied with the decision, you can still provide new names, or you can raise your issues. You even have an opportunity to, we have had situations where people attach a letter. You can attach a letter explaining certain things, why, or to create clarity. Because maybe someone will ask you, what is this? We do not reject abbreviations, but again, your abbreviation can't be a name of another company. We have had someone who had a name, it was another company, and many times you'll find such people are related. And particularly with NGOs, we have times where there are disputes between the parties. We have this NGO, I'm aware you have not incorporated, because prior to the 2016 NGO Act, they were reserving names and going, they were not incorporating. So I'll run and incorporate a company. When probably James goes to the NGO bureau, they tell them, go to URSB to incorporate. When you come to us, we're like, but this name is here, and it's the exact name. So we have also those scenarios where there are those issues regarding people related, incorporating the names, or we have a conversation. Before I know it, one of the people in that meeting rushes and reserves the name. Yet we spoke about this thing that we should come up with and all. And then we also have an issue with, now with the update, one of the realities we're having, people set up companies, they do not know where these people are. Someone will tell you, yes, we did it in the 90s, we're no longer in touch and everything. So we tell you, look at your articles, because in your articles, you have a provision on removal of members. And some of them don't even have grounds. Now, that is one thing would really encourage you. What is the criteria for removing members? There are those, yesterday I had a conversation with a client who came and they were removing a member. And I told him, but the reason you're putting here, because he just had a resolution, he hadn't read the articles. You said it was in 8A. They had A, B, C, D. A was a non-payment of annual fees of 500,000 per year. So I told him, so have the rest of you been paying? He says, no, that is the lawyer who put that. Would really implore you to read through these documents before you sign, because some of the things you put there some of, in your articles, you'll say you'll have a minimum of 5 directors, yet you don't even have the 5. So would really implore you, before you sign these documents, please read. The person you have as a company secretary should be someone who has an idea on compliance, because there are timelines. If it's a members meeting, a special resolution, a board ordinary resolution, they're supposed to be filed within 30 days. Short of that, there's a penalty. But you see, you'll find people saying, no, these people were removed 10 years ago, but you never filed with the Registrar of Companies. Or you have another issue is companies where all the members have died. Now that one where all the members have died, we have there's a difficulty in distinguishing the role of the members and the directors. You'll find there's a particular company where it's really old, like 86. They kept on appointing directors. In their minds, they thought those were members. So they kept on filing resolutions, doing this, running the company, but without actually admitting these people as members. So they reached a point where there was no member. And where there's no member in this company, it means this company has to be wound up. Now, we have regulations of 2023, where in the event that most of the members have died, the surviving member, so one member, can admit new members. Because remember, companies limited by guarantee are not for profit. So it means when I am a member and I die, it ends there. It's not transferable to my family or my administrators, unlike in the case of companies limited by shares. So those are some of the things, if we address, we can do that. Maybe just the last thing, probably we have seen NGOs and generally companies limited by guarantee. As a registrar of companies, we have quasi-judicial powers. We can listen to petitions, disputes in companies. Now, we have noticed the majority of our disputes are from companies limited by guarantee. And it surrounds one major thing: mismanagement and money. There's a particular one where one of the members was removed, and he was not a Ugandan, he was deported. Now, he sorted out his issues. By the time he came, things had been changed. He had been removed as a director, bank accounts, money had moved, and all that. So, as we also have set up these companies, we should also know who we are working with. we should have that level of trust. It shouldn't be looked at as a money-making venture and out there to probably cheat one another or do that. Because, as I said, most of them, and these are around churches and all, on the leadership issues. Now, if that can be addressed in your articles, if you're going to have directors serving for this number of years, especially those companies that have very many people, you'll find some of them will say you'll serve as a director for 10 years. Or some of them will say you'll serve as a director for 5 years with an option of re-election once, to avoid that monotony of one person running the show and doing everything to the detriment of the other members, and of course to the detriment of the vision that it was set up. Thank you.
Patricia, thank you very much, Patricia. You raise, you kept talking about regulation number 22, but you're talking to lay people. Lay people, regulation, guidelines, we are starting to learn that space. But you also say, and Stephen said it too, we have to recruit compliance officers, people who know. We don't have money for compliance officers, Stephen, Patricia. So, and I know that you have been participating in these regional engagements where you're raising that awareness amongst spaces like this of the URSB, the regulations, when somebody dies, when you can't trace the founder, when you can't trace the subscribers, what happens? Are you developing, over the years, like you said, you're doing the guidelines now on the name. Are there other guidelines or Q&A, frequently asked questions that you're developing so that people can then go to those based on the experience that you're seeing?
Yes, Sheila, we have that. We are trying even to make it easy to extract certain decisions. What decisions require probably special resolution means 75% of the members vote. Ordinary is 50. So we want to make it easy so that you say, okay, we want to do this. What kind of decision is that? What kind of resolution is this? Of course, we are aware of probably generally the compliance and also the way some of these companies operate. That's why we have regional offices. And also we have a collaboration with URA and KCCA and local government. You'll find a URSB officer in 44 municipalities spread out through the country. As far as Koboko, as far as Kisoro, Moroto, you'll find someone from URSB. And of course, for the regional offices, we're in Hoima, Mbale, Mbarara, Masaka, Gulu, Arua, and those. Oh. And then within Kampala. So we want to, there are those companies, people who come to us, we walk this journey with them. We always have client relationship officers who are there to guide you. Someone will come and tell you, we want to do this. Or there's this issue, how can we go about it? We're there to guide you and to enable you comply. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. I think James mentioned the decentralization and how it's emerging as a best practice and how people are also appreciating that service. Okay, last but not least, as 20:12, Lazarus. That was John chapter. James, Lazarus was John chapter 11. James told me. John chapter 11. Lazarus. FIA. How are we faring? We've tried to understand FIA. We've tried to file the annual return certificates. James talked about the issue of responsiveness. Even as we come to you, submit documents, we're not hearing back. But how are we faring? The positive aspects as NGOs, what are you seeing in terms of legal compliance? Are we better? Are we still stuck? What are those challenges? How are we faring, Lazarus?
Thank you, Sheila. First, I want to appreciate DPI for initiating these engagements. You'll agree with me, they are creating constructive feedback, and we are grateful. Yona and team, please keep this up. In terms of how the sector is faring in terms of compliance, I would say there are varied indications of how you are complying as a sector. Because looking at the various compliance requirements under the law, is the first one of registration. I would say this one you are faring quite well. You are faring quite very well. Perhaps because Stephen and team have made it a requirement for renewal of permits to have this registration. But I'll commend you for that effort. We see a lot of registrations with the authority. And the other obligation where we're doing quite well is the filing of the annual compliance reports. And the issue has come out about feedback on these compliance reports. You will realize that it's quite a huge number of NGOs. And internationally, they recommend a risk-based approach when we are dealing with such big numbers, because as we know, my colleague here talked about unfunded priorities and limited government resources. So even at the authority, we are using a risk-based approach. We focus more on the NGOs which are identified to be at higher risk, so that we can be able to effectively give feedback. But I'm also happy to report that we have since enhanced our capacity internally, so you should be able to see a lot more feedback in this regard. Regarding the other obligations, there's one where you're required to do capacity building, training your staff in terms of understanding money laundering, but especially terrorism financing. Because the risk faced by NGOs mainly is in relation to terrorist financing. And like Stephen indicated, most of the sentiments or the feelings which have come through the report provisionally presented by Dr. James relate to limited capacity. Some of the things I mentioned, it's because of lack of awareness, lack of knowledge on the workings of the Financial Intelligence Authority, and obligations in general. So we think if we step up capacity building, we can be able to meet some of these identified gaps. One specific thing which I wanted to speak to at this point is the issue of delays in registration, and the feeling was that it was because people were trying to solicit some kind of facilitation, and they commended one entity and left the rest of us in a pool. I felt a bit aggrieved because at FIA, we do not charge anything for any of the services we offer. And indeed, we've gone ahead, at least for this specific area of registration, to automate it. You don't have to interface with any FIA staff, so there's even no opportunity to ask for facilitation. You can sit in the comfort of your offices, up country, in your home, and complete the registration seamlessly. So since you are given an opportunity to contribute to the report before it's finalized, I hope we can move to the other pool of those who don't ask for facilitation.
James.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. The other compliance obligations we are looking at is you are expected to have policies in place to make sure that your systems are not abused to fund terrorism. Here, most NGOs are not doing very well. We've done some on-site inspections. We've worked with Stephen here, and we find a weakness here. You know, policies are the high-level statements which state what the entity intends to do, and it is inculcated into the employees, and it eventually becomes culture. So when there's weakness in policies, we believe there's vulnerability in terms of the entities, and they can be exploited to finance terrorism. The other issues is periodical reporting to FIA when you see suspected acts of terrorism or money laundering. We've not seen this happening, but I believe they are suspicious either transactions or attempts. From the provisional report, someone reported being approached by someone who wanted to fund the NGO, but in the same approach, they requested that a part of the money be sent back. That is a suspicious attempt to transact with the NGO, which should ideally be reported to the FIA. So it has come out from these engagements, but at the authority, we don't have any such reports. So in that regard, the compliance obligation of reporting, I would say the NGOs have not fared quite well. The other issues of record keeping, KYC, basically knowing who actually funds the NGO, there is some room for improvement in terms of these compliance obligations, but we are aware that this is a journey. We have to work together. We continue our outreach activities, working together with the Bureau to ensure that at least you have knowledge of your obligations. And until we are sure that you have knowledge of your obligations, I'm sure you are all aware that we have not sanctioned any NGO for failure to comply with anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism requirements. So I was surprised when I had the issue of witch hunting, because if it was that, we have a lot of ground to penalize. But like I said, it is better to create trust-driven compliance rather than forceful compliance. So that is the paradigm we have at FIA. So the issue of witch hunting, Sheila, does not arise. And but we pick these findings. We think it is constructive feedback. We can look at them and try to establish why is there this feeling. For example, there was a feeling that FIA targets is biased, has the religious bias, specifically mentioning that we are targeting Muslim-based NGOs. This is not true, because targeting would mean that probably we've sanctioned some of them. And like I indicated, we've not had any sanctions against any NGO. The only place where I see this could have come from is the terrorism financing and risk assessment that we did and was released in May 2023. This assessment looked at a whole entire spectrum of NGOs in the country, trying to identify which ones are more at risk in line with international standards, because resources are not infinite. We are supposed to focus our resources, our energies on those which are at high risk of terrorism financing. So when we conducted this risk assessment, the results showed that all NGOs broadly were at low risk of terrorism financing. But within those low risk categories, two specific categories were identified to be at a higher risk than the rest. The first one was NGOs which operate madrasas. Those are teachings of the Quran, but also NGOs which operate in areas prone to insecurity, or those with high terrorist threats, for example, on the western border of the country. So those are the two categories, and that's where I see the first insinuation to religious bias. But I must also communicate that this was not the work of FIA. It was the work of a wide spectrum of actors, including NGOs, including government, including the Bureau. So if it is biased, probably you should say that the entire country is biased against such. But I would say it's not true. And indeed, it has come out previously. This is not the first time. So I admit that those sentiments are there. And that we've taken initiatives to ensure that we kind of correct these biases. Just last month, we signed an MOU with the Interreligious Council of Uganda. And one of the tenets of that MOU is to reach out to all these religious entities, the faith-based organizations, to really understand the risk that they have as entities, so that when there are enhanced surveillance measures, they don't think it's a target, but actually it is a requirement that where there's high risk, then you focus some bit of more resources there. There was the issue of us being very technical and using a lot of jargon. I hope I've not been a victim to that, but I must confess, yes, this is true. The ML CFT regime, jargon again, is quite complicated. It's new to the country. So it is up to us to actually reach out more so that this so perceived jargon becomes common speak. It becomes even worse if you go to our traditional languages. Money laundering is not there in Uganda. You struggle. So you may have your technical stuff on your fingertips, but actually laying it to the common person is a bit difficult. We take it as an area for us to improve, to be able to deliver our communication effectively. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Lazarus. Lazarus, thank you for making us wiser and helping us understand the scope and the challenges also, but also responding to the issues that James is raising, especially the issue of the religious bias, because it's not the first time it's coming, as you have said. I want us to thank Lazarus. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Godwin. And thank you, Stephen, for your time and for that information. With a big clap. I'll send it to you now. It's 12:30. I know, Godwin, you have to leave. So any questions going to KCCA, you will answer first, and then you can dash out, okay? So I'll give you an opportunity. We'll take maybe 5, and then go from here. But we know the rules of engagement, as Jonas says. We are listening, we are asking questions, we are being diplomatic. Yeah. So somebody help with a microphone. Tassilo, you're very welcome. Head of Programs, Governance, and Civil Society Program, GIZ. There you are. Thank you. Your name, that's Tassilo? Just that?
Yes, that's fine.
Oh, that's
my
fine.
full name is Tassilo von Rosted zu Hülshoff, but that's,
Yay.
I think, a tongue twister.
Tassilo, that one I can't even handle. Now at least that one, that T. But you're very welcome. Thank you very much. Head of Programs at GIZ. Okay then, let's start. Microphones, yes. I have one here, but I can't jump. So let's do how? Let's go here, and then there. Okay, but let's...
Hey, okay. I start.
Thank you so much, Sheila and DPI, for bringing this together. And thank you so much, our panelists, for bringing us to speed, especially enlightening us on a few other issues that probably we did not know about. I want to first of all thank the regulators. At least there's been a positive change, a positive trend towards the regulations and also the enhancement of the capacity for different NGOs. Let's be realistic that we still have some key issues as far as timeliness and also the openness is concerned. And for this, I would like to throw a question to URSB. What's with the PO box? I know there are issues to do with digitalization of the economy. We are moving from analog to digital, but we are still being pushed to the wall, as far as for post office box numbers is concerned. What's so special with it? My name is Taremo Albert. I lead a team at Local Sustainable Communities Organization based in Kabale.
Kabale. Albert, thank you. So we give each one question, just one, okay? We're going to circles. Please introduce yourself and the organization and where you come from in terms of district. Okay, next, behind there. Hilda, where are you? Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Badru Mugabi. I'm the resident city commissioner for Hoima City. I just want to share some information to guide. 3 things happened in Hoima City, which could be a good benchmark. The first is the government of Uganda is piloting a one Uganda service center where all ministries and regulators have been put in one room to serve people and respond to NGO-related and other services. So once it is successful and it's already operational in the city, it's going to be rolled over in the other districts or regions. Then the other thing I would like to share is the NGO Bureau and the FIA on an annual basis come to Hoima and bring us in one room with the NGOs and have all issues brought to table and we respond to them. And that's why you've not had issues coming out of or observations from Hoima. But also I want to note that there is an NGO that facilitated foreign would-be journalists who came as students or journalists for tourism, and they got tourism visas into the country. But the moment they got to the country, they became either investigators or researchers. And of course, this should be noted to the NGOs not to drift from the mission. But on a local scene, which I want to also share, is we have issues in local governments where they point at security stakeholders, where NGOs are not compliant when it comes to signing of MOUs with local authorities. And then they come back to us when they want us to make recommendations or to sign for them as they're processing renewals. And then we put it back to the authorities where they have MOUs, we put it back to security, the DSOs, and that delay sometimes is caused by the NGOs. And then, as I conclude, we have an issue of non-declaration of budgets to inform government on the amount of the off-budget support. as we rationalize, we also have the very last one, where CBOs tend to function as NGOs, that is working outside their jurisdiction. We had an issue where an NGO operating in Central Region brought very many people from Central Region, Northern Region to the city. And of course, security had to interest itself. And through checking here and there, the NGOs tend to cry foul, which should also be appreciated. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the RCC. Thank you for sharing those good practices and, of course, the challenges that you're seeing within the sector. Noted. Thank you.
Yeah.
One question.
Yes, please. My name is Ismail. I also come from Hoima. My question is to URSB. There is a challenge. Banks deal with us as NGOs. And remember, as NGOs, we register as companies limited by guarantee first, and then to the NGO Bureau. So there is a challenge that because banks deal every day with the other types of companies, which are more of business, they rarely understand how NGOs work. And at times they will be asking for too much. I mean, not too much, but things that they should be asking the other companies to NGOs as well. So I only wanted to know your relationship as URSB with these banks, and especially how you are covering these gaps, knowledge gaps from banking officers, and understanding how to deal with NGOs and their banks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What's your name again?
My name is Ismail Kusemerera. I'm the Executive Director of the Midwestern Region and Corruption Coalition of Hoima.
Thank you, Ismail. Hoima. Okay. Anyone that side?
Gender balance.
I'm coming, McLean. We are done with this side. Kakuru, no question today. Okay. Let's start with you. Your name?
I'm Frederick Bombo. I'm Executive Director, Kalamba Community Development Organization in Ibutambala District. Mr. John, DPI, I wanted to suggest that we also have a parliament representation in this kind of forum, because they are the ones who pass the laws. They sit back, relax, and they don't come to monitor as we go through the frying pan. So let them also be represented when we have another session of this.
Okay.
Secondly,
we agreed one.
Let me just pass this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that both our regulators and we, the regulator, we are still incapacitated to implement these laws that they have put up. I want to give an example of the bad things that NSSF was not up there, or even Revenue Authority. We have issues with their systems. They always update their systems. And some of our people may not be able to actually keep up with the updates. And for example, in SSF, when you go there, they tell you have to do it yourself because they don't trust their staff. And if we are talking about trust, that's where the mistrust starts. Because if they cannot trust their staffs, then how can we trust them in terms of our money? Revenue, I wanted to find out, besides, you are not on the panel, but revenue, I want to find out, besides the contribution we are making towards the government programs, as NGOs and civil society organizations, what is our contribution to the government's budget in terms of tax? Okay. Maybe it is somehow we are not visible. That's why we always eyes are on us in a way. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Those questions, you will keep them for the afternoon. We'll have NSSF definitely on the panel, including the URA. But thank you.
Thank you, Sila. The men are talking alone.
No. I'm coming. I'm just being systematic. I'm getting to you. Everyone will speak. Yes, Kamawang.
Thank you very much. A very quick one to KCCA and my brother from NGO Bureau. I think, Godwin, you've talked about security and how sometimes the security may take an interest in the renewal or registration of an organization. And my question is, these engagements with security institutions like ISO and the others, is it a structured engagement? Are there rules on how you engage with security in case it's interested in a certain NGO? And the reason I'm asking this is so that the committee or even the NGO bureau is not as intimidated as organizations by security. And is there a mechanism of reporting back to this institution that has put in an application and telling them the truth about their situation? Kindly provide some information. Thank you.
Did you introduce yourself, Bashir?
My name is Bashir Atwesije. I work with the Civic Response on Environment and Development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bashir from CRED. Okay, yes. One question.
Only one.
Only, short one.
Sheila. Thank you so much. Mine goes to the Executive Director, Mr. Okero. Mr. Okero, Dr. Okero. He's called Dr. Okero.
Doctor.
So I'm requesting that NGO Bureau should set up a monitoring team to come in the district, like in comparison with the National Drug Authority. If you set up a clinic, you'll find National Drug Authority coming in to monitor. But we request that let NGO Bureau set up that kind of team so that they can come direct from the headquarters. I've been telling people in every meeting that I'm in that the majority of the people who are working in this civil society organization, they are people directly new graduate from Makerere, from the universities. So they need to be supported. So if you set up a committee like from maybe the RDC's office, locals, parish chiefs, those people may not understand. So we need to support these people. Like me, I'm Dr. Solomon. I work for the National Medical Alliance for Prisoner Support. It's an organization which is strengthening health in prisons. We work with Ministry of Health, UPS, and the Ministry of Gender. So when you set up a team, people come from the district, fine, they know. But we need you, we need to understand you. Like the way you see National Drug Authority, for them they come and they say, do this, do this, do this. However, I had questions for all panelists, but I've been given only one question.
Thank you very much. And we have the booths there. You can ask them as well. Thank you, Solomon, and for the work that you do. Okay. McLean.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kiomia McLean, and I work with the Alliance of Women Advocating for Change. We work with grassroots communities, and we are an NGO. For me, my humble request, it's not even a question, but it's a humble request. We've seen so many other service providers providing awards beyond the emails. I know NSSF, URA, you send us those emails appreciating for filing the taxes. Can we now get into the tangible? I see that award as I get into the office. And I touch, I feel, I said, okay, I tried my best to comply, and this is the payback. I think it's very important. So for all, even NGO Bureau, please do it to us, so that it inspires and motivates other NGOs to actually comply. Thank you.
So award them money cash or this
award. If they have money, well and good.
That one
social
is nice.
Responsibilities, but I mean those are
the plaques. Thank you, McLean. Great. I saw a hand here. One question.
I think, my mic is on. Okay. My name is Alan. I'm from GLU, and I'm working with an organization with women with disabilities. Now, I also work with Light for the World International, Uganda. I had two questions, but I will ask the Executive Director, URSB. And I also had one for Patricia. But let me start with Patricia. I remember we had a meeting in GLU. I think it was last year. URSB staff informed me about when we are coming up with an organization, never to use the word Uganda when we are coming up with the name of our organization. So I fail to understand when you come up with something like Western Uganda something or Northern Uganda something, if there is a word Uganda, she advised that we never use that word. So I failed to understand why shouldn't we use Uganda in registering our names? What's the problem with using the term Uganda? Then, coming to the director, the executive director, when you talk about capacity building, yeah, it is very, very clear. And it is also important for you as the regulators because you also have, I may say, low capacity in some areas. For example, when it comes to disability inclusion, I think you also need your capacity to be enhanced because we are finding challenges. So you also need to build your capacity as the regulators to see how you're going to help we persons with disabilities or organizations for persons with disabilities. I think it's also vital for you to build or enhance your capacity in addressing issues in regards to persons with disabilities. And also this issue of, you've been talking about the 2 million fines. Why don't we maybe reduce this 200K? But sincerely, 2 million, it's not fair. Maybe you can extend the period that you're giving us, but 200K could have been fair, but 2 million, really, it is not fair. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What's our name again?
My name is Alan Nume Okwang.
Thank you very much, Alan. Those are really critical issues that you're raising. And the interpreter, thank you so much. What's your name, interpreter? We normally forget.
Raymond Tonina.
Raymond, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Good questions. We are going this side. Okay. One brief question. One brief question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Muya James Jemo. I come from Karamoja, Moroto. I work for ASEMP, Africa Center for Energy and Mineral Policy. My question is to KCCA and URSB. One is, we talked of no fees being charged for the services that have been said. So my question is, what then should we do to ensure that those charges are avoided? Is there any helpline maybe we are giving to the people so that they can call in case any staff asks for those charges? Then to URSB, it was still the issue of the names. I think other people have already said it.
Have emphasized. Thanks, Jemo. That's nice and brief. One brief one.
Thank you very much. My question is going...
Your names?
My names are Weche Robinson. I come from Lira. I work for Serve Uganda. My question is going to Dr. Stephen. I just wanted to know how it came about the 2 million. How did you conclude to 2 million? Thank you.
Stephen, how did you come to 2 million? Thank you very much. We're moving. One last one, 2, and then we go.
Okay, thank you so much. I am, call me Frank Lopeko Moski. I am from Moroto as well. I stopped asking questions, but rather I just have to make a few inquiries. But this one goes to all the regulators. I truly appreciate the innovation that we are pushing on as a country as far as we're talking about digitalization. I want to talk about the digital platforms, just like Madam had said that you can do anything at the comfort of your own home. Thank you so much, but sometimes we want to talk about the efficiency or the effectiveness of these systems. Like if I don't push her without me knowing someone from URSB and I want some document to be maybe, I want a true certified copy in a short time possible. Without anybody there, it takes too long. Maybe I request, since we already have the top heads here, maybe you could also make sure that you get a way to be following up people who are responsible, who are supposed to give a service, but rather they sit on their desk without playing their part well. This one is just a request to make everything that the people are accountable. I don't have questions for you. People will ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your name again?
Frank Lopek Muski. I work with the Kayese Community Organization. Kayese came from Karamoja Youth Positive Environment, but because URSB limited us from our old name, so we remain Kayese Community Organization. So we are we're also victims of some services.
Patricia now, another victim. Even Kayese, what? Kayese, that one.
Thank
Patricia. Okay, thank you. One brief question.
Thank you very much. Orik is my name. Eric. The Assistant Cow, Gulu District Local Government. I just want to put the perspective of Gulu District. In Gulu District, it is true we have had challenges with NGOs rushing for letters of recommendation, which my senior has already put it very well. Inadequate planning on somebody's side should not constitute an emergency. That is very clear. And we have had that challenge, but notwithstanding, DNMC is operating. We do not ask for money for facilitation, but all we do is we make them present in form of an inception. The inception meeting is organized cross-cutting. It brings on board the TPC, the Technical Planning Committee. It brings on board the District Executive Committee, and then the Office of the RDC and the DISO. So after the development partner or the NGO intending to acquire a recommendation presents, then the team will recommend and the process continues. Then I will also request that somebody should say something about local service tax by NGOs. I also request this one on a very serious note that the law should be harmonized. You find the Local Government Act, 5th schedule of the Local Government Act still talks about sources of revenue as licenses and registration of the CBOs and CSOs. And on the other side, I'm also very much aware that that is the mandate of the Bureau to register. So we need to cascade this information across all the districts so that there is uniformity, so that certain fees that are not charged on these people are not charged cross-cutting. Then finally, allow me also put this very clear that NGOs are supposed to be encouraged to participate in budget conference and budgeting processes. Because this is where they will see and observe the unfunded priority and support the government in the right cause and putting in consideration the district priorities in the various districts that they operate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oriem, and of course, thank you for making the time and for supporting the regional engagements as well. Okay, I'm moving this side. Panelists, should we take all the questions and then we'll answer to go? Godwin, I know. Time. Do you want to say something before you leave so I can let you go? Okay. Let's just give Godwin a chance for a short response and then, yeah.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the questions and comments that you have raised. You'll bear with me. I am supposed to have been somewhere else in an equally important engagement at midday. This is why I'm requesting to respond. There were two areas that required my response. One, is there a structured way when it comes to security vetting? Yes. Mr. Bashir, we formally submit the NGOs that security may have to vet with a writing. They receive it formally, and once they do their vetting, they also report back to us formally, and they state whether we should go ahead and recommend or we shouldn't go ahead and recommend. And when it comes to how they do the vetting, that is the work of security. But what I know, they also engage with the NGOs in question physically. They visit and have some discussions. If there is any feedback, they give it to them. But should we now get a negative response, as in terms of a negative report where they are saying, don't go ahead, we also give this information, this feedback to the NGO, stating the reasons given by security, but rarely do we have that. Secondly, the issue of those who request for some kitu kidogo, I don't know how to call it, that the service is free, but someone says, give me some facilitation so that I help on the process. I would like to encourage you to report such in confidence. But you know, the reporting will only be helpful if you have some evidence. Otherwise, the person will still deny. And in the modern times, the phones are helping us. Kindly record this person. Record and report in response. We would be able to deal with that person in confidence as per the law established. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very, very good meeting and resolutions.
Thank you very much, Godwin. Please join me in thanking and appreciating Godwin. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your time. The booth is behind there.
Yes, can I request my team to stand? I have two members, my colleagues. Mr. John Michael Lloyd is here, and Mr. Majidu Wadamba Mwonge. They will respond to any other questions that we may still have.
John is here, Majid is here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Godwin. You can slowly leave. Thank you very much. Okay, one question behind here. Just brief. Okay.
Thank you so much. My name is Christopher Chandia of Naomi Children's Foundation, Omoro. My question or my concerns will go to Dr. Okello Stephen of NGO. Our problem as NGO in Omoro is one, the access to the information that NGO relates to the NGOs in that region. One, we don't have good network. We don't have electricity that is reliable. We don't have good telephone network. And most times the NGO expects us to use internet to communicate. So we have to come to Gulu 35 kilometers to be able to access good internet and maybe other services like printing and things like that. So my request to the NGO is to find other communication mechanisms. They have our telephone numbers to communicate to us directly. But we also have challenges of they don't communicate at all. When you have any concern, they don't bring back feedback. We don't receive from them. We are a little bit perturbed.
Okay.
And we Naomi Children's Foundation, we have processed our renewal of permit, including the payment of the fines of 6 million, and every document has been tendered in, but since for over 1.5 years now, we haven't received our permit, and we travel all the time to the office, but nothing happens. So we are requesting that this kind of process be made like the one of FIA, which is really very swift, and then URSB does things very well. So we request that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're in the right place. Naomi Children Foundation. Going. Did I see? Okay, Peter, one question, brief one.
Thank you so much. I'm Majela Peter Guayaka, the ED of DENIVA, which is a network of indigenous organizations. My first comment is to my friend Patricia from URSB. Lately, URSB is encouraging people to use forms, which is makes registration easy, incorporation easy, the incorporation form. But one, the form requires people to adopt Table C of the Companies Act. I don't know how many people in this room have read Table C of the Companies Act. And they adopt. And many times, even when the form, the option which says adopt with amendments, says the amendments can only be 2 pages. So when you advise, like, people should put these things in their memorandum, a lot of times I've seen it practically hard because some people just adopted Table C and it's hard. They don't even know they've never even heard of that. Another issue I want to talk to is the rationalization, which I've not heard many people talk about. My friend Stephen Okello avoided it, and we understand why. colleagues from the NGO sector, if you look at your certificate right now, your permit, it is signed by the executive director of the NGO Bureau. And the new law, which is yet to be signed by the president, is removing that position. In effect, the certificates will be signed by the NGO Bureau, which is a committee now. And in effect, you'll have to sit and wait until that committee sits and it decides whether to probably renew your permit. Right now, we have a backlog. I don't know how long, but from my practice, it takes you between 4 months to 8 months to get a permit from the NGO Bureau, when this thing is signed by someone who sits in the Bureau every day. I don't know how long it's going to take. If it's going to be signed by people who will be meeting probably once every 3 months or something, I don't know how long it's going to take. And that should be a major concern. Could I say one more?
One brief one, Peter.
Okay. James's report is very interesting, and I've always found this thing which is interesting, and for the security people in this room. You see, district NGO monitoring committees are supposed to monitor NGOs, and for us as Deneva, we really want NGOs that are genuine. We don't like to have NGOs that are flash disk NGOs. The guy carries everything in his flash disk. Now, when you put NGOs in a situation of funding you, if I have to pay for you to meet, to pay for you to come and monitor me, chances are that I will pass. Because I'm the one funding. And that has been the problem. And it is a problem that has actually promoted a number of NGOs that don't exist. Because all you need is fund these guys, and they give you a document, and you don't have any office, you don't have anything on ground. That has been a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much, out of your own experience. As we move, there's a question here. Changes in names, I think to Patricia, or changes in names if a CBO is to graduate from CBO to NGO. At times, their original names are rejected. Why? Okay, where was the hand? Okay, very brief, one question, and then I'll move here.
Okay, thank you. James Malinga, the Director, Mountains of Hope. Mine is about the postal address. I think this is URSB. I have a church registered as a company, by guarantee, limited by guarantee. And then I also have an NGO, Mountains of Hope, limited by guarantee. And then I have a business, limited by shares. And I'm the director of the three. I'm required to have 3 postal addresses in order for me to renew to file the returns. Unfortunately, this has halted or hampered my registration process. And I'm thinking by the time I go back to renew, I will be fined 2 million. Is there a way that these 3 can be merged into one postal address? And also, is it possible to waive off the 2 million if I asked, just like the president waived off the IFRIS 6 million? I don't know whether it's possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Very interesting question on postal address. One brief one.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Binez Erohirwa Gilbert. I am the Fundraising and Partnership Officer at Let's Help International and the Publication and Social Media Manager at Chakatu Refugee-led Organizations Network. My question goes to Dr. Okello Stephen. Why you have been talking about capacity building for CBOs and LILOs and NGOs, but at least you have capacity building and people are capacitated. You even talked about resources, lack of resources, because most of the time for us when we even get fundings, they are budgeted. and to employ an auditor or a compliant agent needs money. And this money doesn't get budgeted in the budget we get from the fundings. And sometimes we are obliged by funders. We have some other obligations they give us. So why don't you maybe have someone you put in every district to be helping us down there, because you know at least you have resources. You just maybe pay one in every district, you put him there. Another one goes to Patricia, URSB, in rejecting names. We face this. Why don't you put someone to the district level? You go to the district level, they register your name, but when you reach to URSB, they reject the name. Why don't you work with district officers in charge so that when we begin from there, the name will be the same name at URSB? Because sometimes even our funders may think we are doing fraud by changing names, and it creates problems to us.
Thank you, Billy. Issue of name, issue of capacity building. I'm moving on here. One question, brief.
Thank you very much. My name is Bira Chiwanuka Nasa. I work with Recreation for Development and Peace. My concern relates to, first, the research that was presented by James, but also us, all of us on the panel, to maybe pick a leaf. Local governments have recently been assessed on certain parameters of compliance, gender, youth inclusion, environmental sensitivity, and the like. What if the Bureau engaged the local governments as part of their compliance mechanism to have, one, timelines, not timelines, schedules, so that the district NGO monitoring committee, the sub-county NGO monitoring committee, we know they sit maybe once a month. Like we know TPC sits this and this time. We know council sits at least once every 2 months. So such that there are schedules upon which actors can fit in, as opposed to waiting, because my organization sits on the NGO monitoring committee of Masin district. But I'm telling you, whereas we also support, but sometimes you find the NGOs really struggling to have their documents that are recommended. I thank you.
Thank you, Bira. Thank you very much for that proposal. Anyone this row? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Sheila, what I'm about to say is very important, and as a politician, I may need some small time.
Your name first, politician.
Yes, I am Judith Drale Rumaturu, Project Lead, Partners in Community Social Action, Moyo District. Let me just give my own opinion that we are all dangerous orphans. The NGOs, the district, the regulators. There's really a gap in capacity and knowledge. I just want to say that let's add FIA in the good book. We came to know about them after the NGO Bureau telling us, do you have the FIA certificate? And this was urgent. They supported, it was less than a week. We got the certificate, and it is free. Lazarus only forgot to tell us that the punishment is imprisonment if you don't follow the law. And then when we come to URSB, names, we don't have problems. But I want to acknowledge that they have moved. Recently, I saw them in Germany. I almost called my husband to come and register our marriage. And then when I moved to Koboko, they were there. It shows that they have reached the region, and you can get your problems, walk to them, or engage them online. To me, that is credit. We must give where it is due. And then when it comes to the NGO Bureau, Dr. Okello, thank you so much. I'm giving a good one first. That I took over the organization as a project lead when the certificate had already expired. I only concentrated at the district level, not knowing that there was a permit needed until when we are supposed to land a good money, and they say give us the permit to operate national. And we had 21 months. That's mean a 42 million fine outstanding. And this is an organization that didn't have the money. And then when I reached, actually, even entering Kingdom Hall is like, I don't know if heaven is like that. It was not easy, you stagger. But the policemen there were welcoming. And then on reaching there, they told me, Madam, 42 million. Somebody even advised me, say, I saw an NGO, say, why don't you change the name of the NGO? I said, how can we change the name of the NGO when we already have a 200 million standing somewhere to be received? It is impossible. Then another one told me, it will be too long. I have a lawyer you get. I said, no, I don't speak to lawyers. I don't know. I want to meet Mr. Okello. Yes. And indeed, we had a privilege to put down, he said, a waiver explaining that the NGO started, it never had funding. The lockdown came in, and now his conclusion was, there's no ignorance in law. Since you have defaulted, we cannot leave you like that. He scrapped off 40 million and we paid 2 million. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yes.
You're lucky.
Yes, I must speak it. And then I don't think the issue now is, Mr. Okello, URA, people take them as bad. But to us, when we walked to their office, they said, you have ABC. I said, we didn't have money. They said, okay, we're now charging you from March 2023. Be able to pay this. And when you do not have money as an NGO, you don't have funding, please, 0 tons, give us. Inform us earlier that we do not have the funding until sometime. The same thing with NSSF that moved from Arua to Moyo just to talk to an NGO that has 5 staff in office. And then we are just begging the NGO Bureau that just as URSB has moved to region, engage your guys to move to the region. Ask the government for money because you must rest assured that we are taxpayers. Yes. We're giving money to the government and we must be listened to. Justice for the dangerous orphans. The district local government. I am not at them, I'm not bribing them. I must tell you, I've moved from Jumani, Moyo, Koboko, Maracha, Arua district and city, including Yumbe. They've never asked for money to sit to give us a recommendation. But what they demand is you submit your reports earlier, explain to them what they're doing, and there are some NGOs who these guys do not know about. And now starting an NGO, we thought was like selling shop. It is not. We have that gap of knowing about the laws that come, that follow us, that you need to work on because you also need money from us. The more NGOs you get, the more funding you will get as a government. We don't care where you'll put the money. We need that justice.
And
yes.
lastly?
And lastly, kindly, you can use the NGO. I see NGO forums in the district. Why don't they bridge the gap between the NGO bureau up here and the NGOs down there in the district? You could work with them so that they are aware of what is going on and also talk to us because these NGO forums will also give them 100,000 annually. They must appreciate it and we need that.
Accountability.
Yes, there are cases where local government will ask you for money. They say, we have time for sitting, maybe quarterly. In case you want something urgent, they don't force you. In case you need something urgent, give us this much. Where you don't even sign. So when you don't need it, that means you have to wait. But let me tell you, NGOs, let's wake up. Tell the government, local government what we're doing. Let's be on the side of the law, and the law will be on our side.
Thank you.
Yes, my salary is 800,000, but I still pay URA and NSSF. Why? Because I feel it is important and we're obligated to do that. Let's stop being BFXs. Let's get the right information, and Mr. Okello, go with your guys, educate us.
Thank you very much. Here you have the URA, but they are clapping for you. Now, tax exemption, you come and ask for it. They'll give you. He's too happy here and everything. Okay. Thank you very much. One question, very brief. I gave her an opportunity because she forewarned me.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm called Masumbuko Charles.
Yes, Charles.
From Afford in the Renzo region. I'm glad that I'm talking to my regulators, but it's kind of a combination that goes from URSB to NGO Bureau. It's something to do with maybe like RCC had noted that there was a CBO which went and had a bigger meeting in the region. I don't know whether you noted that there are some CBOs that are richer than NGOs. But the challenge is, even if you want to be more compliant, you can't get, for example, a National Intelligence Authority certificate without entering into URSB. But URSB portal doesn't permit that. And then there is also something to do with the lack of coordination, especially when you look at the trends, how some of our organizations start. You start as a CBO, you can operate as a CBO for the last 10 years. But when it comes to reservation, you want to reserve, now this name gets issues. The technicality is what happens next. URSB team will tell you, come back and change the name. And this is a name you've branded, you've formed, it has been in existence. Basically, everyone knows the name as a service provider in the community, and then URSB gives you a provision. My take is, we are glad that we are now talking to you other than waiting for parliamentarians to discuss this. I am thinking that let you streamline the process of URSB. I think there could be some coordination, how you decentralize this to start down from the sub-county NGO management committees. If you are to improve the NGO sector, and I am happy that we are cultivating the trust for better governance in the NGO sector, let's start it from down, that before a CDO at the sub-county registers an organization, let that be reserved, such that we don't have that technicality in the end when you're trying to become an NGO. Then lastly, Sheila, it happened that there's an organization which was registered with a certificate, but because of the COVID, at the end of the day, when they went to renew, they were told to go and reserve and do the reservation, because at that time, reservation was an option. But people would get certificates from the NGO. By then, it was NGO board. So I tend to ask, what is the implication here that this certificate, because some people got the certificates that are just ending last year at NGO level. Is there room for URSB and then NGO Bureau to let this organization move on with a very name?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much for those queries. We'll move this side. Yes, Uncle Ben, one brief one.
I'm Benon Singwire Abok, and I work for Navoda in Hoima. I must appreciate the National Bureau, Mr. Kero, we really appreciate. You have moved us from very far. The challenge I have faced that I need to share with you and other friends is that it took me a long time to get our certificate renewed. Almost 1 year, and I was wondering what we can do. I even tried to pass through the Human Rights Center to help me assess the Bureau for that renewal, but it took a long time. I was suggesting that maybe there should, we wait for automation, we could assign somebody a desk to make sure dealing with us expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Bakari Kwira Philip Eric from Ginger. I have one generic observation to the regulators. All your mandates are given by Parliament. and you do the implementation of the mandate. You've listened to the voices of the key stakeholders in the sector, informed by a report from Dr. Nkubi. How best do you utilize this summit to make a pronouncement of your preparedness to utilize the report, the voices of the key major stakeholders in the sector as a bargaining tool to make reforms in the sector? We don't get time to interact with the Parliament, but I see, Stephen is very good at PR. And when he speaks, sometimes you say the man is near to God. When actually at operation, the narrative is different. Yes, we appreciate some of the regulators are doing super good. I have no problem with URSB. The big ups for URSB colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
But other regulators, you will still have a long way.
Okay.
And today, as we sit in this summit, we have a document which we think, pronounce yourselves, that the voices, Dr. Nkubi, and the voices from the people here, we need those reforms to ensure that we have a sector which really does not only serve the interests of you, the regulators, but also must be anchored on what we think, how we think the sector should be.
Thank you, Philip.
Then the very last one, Shira. This is one summit which comes, big ups to EPI. Can we speak?
Yes, sir.
Then two, the colleagues have amplified the fees, Ndogo Stephen. At what level do you, when you're preparing guidelines internally, and other colleagues, the regulators, at what level do you involve the stakeholders in making decisions? You sit, you'll tell us 2 million is Parliament. 2 million is Parliament, we may agree. But even then, for social accountability, where does the 2 million go? And what does it do to improve the sector? We may not be having a problem of giving you the 2 million in terms of penalties. But take a cent a wall about. I give you the 2 million, what is it going to add value? Because at the end of the day, we are the key stakeholders. Without us, you have no job as regulators. I thank you.
Thank you, Philip. 2 million. Take a cent a wall about. Translated, put your money where you see it. Okay. Thank you for those issues, but also the issue of commitment. Where are we and how are we taking this report or the preliminary findings of the report? Okay. Thank you, Philip. Briefly? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, DPI, for putting this conversation together. My name is Namasa Juliet Faith, and I'm from Busoga Governance and Social Accountability Network. We are based in Busoga, and to be particular in Jinja. Mine is a message to Stephen. Stephen, in very many forums, I think I've even given you calls about the issue of having only one person in the Ministry of Gender to be in charge of giving recommendations. This time around, we are kindly requesting you, because among the regulators here, you're the one who's closer to the Ministry of Gender. Can you please take this message of ours? We are in pain. Sometimes you go, you want a recommendation, the person has traveled out of the country, and you have to wait. Please take our message. We are in pain. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, you have had the pain. Judith, thank you very much. This row will move now to this one. One question, brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. My name is Paul Mlindwa from Chitara Civil Society Organizations Network. And to Stephen, I think I want to re-emphasize the need for digitization. We've raised this quite a number of times. And we used to know local governments as being too analog and too slow. And we feel bad when our own enabler, when our own main regulator, requires us to move miles and miles, hundreds of kilometers to come and file just a return. And sometimes there is something missing, very small, and you have to move back and come back. I think it's long overdue. We need to digitize, and we should have digitized yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very brief and also very concise. I'm just coming back just because. One brief one. Okay. You have a microphone in front of you.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm called Ida from United Religions Initiative. Mine goes to Patricia. You talked about the due dates for filing resolutions. I would like to inquire more light about that. Actually, I was not familiar with it, because one time we were filing a resolution and we were given a penalty. Actually, we didn't know that we are going to receive one. So they told us, pay such and such amount because you've really delayed to file this. So I would like to more light in regards to that. Then a last quick one. Also, this goes to URSB too. That lengthy process of maybe filing an amendment or a resolution, because of recent, we were amending our MAMATs. Our admin would take our admin would take the MAMATs, and then she would be told that this needs to be amended. Then she comes back the following day after amending what she has been told to amend. Then they tell her, please amend this again. It took us 3 months for our MAMATs to be approved. I kindly request that that should be looked into.
Thank you very much. Your name again?
I'm Ida Baligasa from United Religions Initiative. We are based in Ntinda.
Thank you, Ida. Okay, one last brief one.
Thank you, Comrade Stephen Okero. My name is Blair Musasizi. I work with AFCOD Uganda. My issue, NGOs, we are partners of government in development. But when it comes to the issue of penalty, it is really affecting us, and I would advise that at least as the Bureau come up with a mechanism in that we could interface like it is done in URA. If I'm being demanded, it means 100 million, you sit with URA and they tell you, do a BCD. So I request that come up with a mechanism of helping these NGOs than just letting them to die off because of the penalty issue.
Okay.
Then lastly, however much you like to be compliant, but some of these domestic policies end up scaring the development partners and they run away. So as a government, kindly think about that. Because when you are given this money from abroad, it's not for our personal use. We spend on the community beneficiaries, your people, the wananchi. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to turn it now to our panelists. It is impossible to respond to each and every question. You are going to try, but you're with us. We have lunch. Some of the questions, please, you're going to reach out to the regulators. But I have some of the online questions here very quickly, and I'll summarize. Peter online is saying, wondering why the NGO Bureau requests the same documents such as operational permit, certificate of incorporation, TIN certificate annually, even though these documents have been previously submitted to the NGO Bureau. This goes to URA is not here yet. Lastly, please clarify the role and mandate of the NGO board, bureau, forum, and so on and so forth. I'm curious about when the NGO Bureau will transit to an online system that has been emphasized. In a situation where an organization finds itself cannot continue to operate, what does it do in the case of URSB? Dr. James, in the study, did you come across appreciation of the QAM, the NGO Quality Assurance Mechanisms by NPOs? Anybody said anything about it? Also, submission of annual returns and reports can be to several entities. Why can't this be streamlined? There's URSB, NGO board, KCCA, district, FIA, and so forth and so on. I would like to ask Patricia, why URSB uses archaic methods to decide what a company can even be called. My name, not your body, was rejected as a promotion of prostitution and homosexuality. Will we ever get over this? Dr. James Nkubi, I'll pass this on to you. It's my concern. Let's see, one more one. Do organizations need to file annual returns at the Data Protection Office? That one we shall handle. Yeah, so we have quite a number online, but they revolve around that. What is URSB clear position about registration of international NGOs and the beneficial owners? So to our panelists, in any order, like I said, it's impossible to answer any of these. Pick up the highlights. Let's keep the conversation going. You have had them documented. So, Dr. Stephen, you want to start? Sorry? Do your parting shot as well. Yeah, and this is your message as well. I don't know where it's coming from, but okay, I'll come. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Sheila, and thanks to all the participants for the questions. I will answer as many as I can because of the time. The first question was on monitoring teams, why we do not have teams that are moving directly from the headquarters to the field. We are supposed to have branch offices all over the country, which of course is not yet in place because of the limited resources. But we hope that once these branches are there, you are going to have monitoring teams that come directly to your offices and do not even have to come from the head offices. But as we talk now, because branch offices are not there, we still have a team that monitors directly from the NGO Bureau. But because of the limitations in the resources, they cannot be everywhere throughout a year. That means that not every NGO gets that opportunity for being monitored all the time. But let's hope that we get more funding and we can open these branches so that this issue of monitoring directly within the district is addressed. There was a comment that came out on the issue of tangible awards that was being asked for. Sometime around 2016, we had a similar idea that it's high time we started giving awards to NGOs. But, and I remember, I think we even secured some funding from DGF at that time to see whether we could give awards. But when we started looking into the process of giving awards is not as easy as you may think. Because you may give awards to some individuals, then you are going to spark a very huge conversation. The criteria you used, why that one and not why that one, the level of fairness. And so we realized that for us as NGO Bureau, we can only start giving awards at a time when we are fully digitalized as is being asked for, because awards need a very careful analysis of so many factors and also very clearly designed processes. So in terms of awards, one day we are going to get there because it's important that we need to give awards. We need to thank the NGOs that are doing a great job. But also, if the NGOs also demand, we may also need to expose the NGOs that are not doing a good job. But it's important that these awards are actually introduced, and we are looking forward to that. On the issue of taking into consideration the disabled, I think that's a strong point. It's something which the NGO Bureau is already discussing. We hope that, that if we can have resources to recruit people who can actually cover that arena, we can do it. We have tried to look within the staff that are there who can help us address that gap. But as per now, I can say that we don't yet have someone. But we hope that if we can recruit someone to handle that category, then we are going to do that. There have been so many questions and concerns on fines. And I think I need to respond and say something about those fines. There are so many questions around how it was arrived at. Now, the 2 million fine is contained in the NGO Act. For all of you who are there in 2015, when Parliament was discussing the NGO Bill 2015, you'll clearly see that when that bill went before Parliament, we had used the same rate that had been there since 2006. From 2006 to the time we were discussing this bill, the fine was 1 currency point, which is 20,000 shillings. And when we were on the floor of Parliament, the conversation was, let's continue fining NGOs the 20,000 shillings. But it was on the floor of Parliament that there was a strong objection that if you want to have serious NGOs in this country who can be compliant, because the conversation is about compliance, then you need to put a fine that compels them. However, also, the fine should not be so abrupt. It means that give them a window within which they can actually sort out that fine. The law that was there before, the fine that was there before, provided that if your permit expired and you did not renew within 3 months, then you started paying the 20 million. The Parliament rejected that. They said that if you can accept someone to operate illegally for 3 months, then you are, let me say, promoting and encouraging people to operate for 3 months without a valid document. So they said instead of making it 3 months after expiry, give them a 6 months period before expiry for people to be able to go and apply for renewal. Whoever does not take advantage of the 6 months period before expiry, then must be able to pay the fine. So the 2 million was an amount that was arrived at on the floor of Parliament. It did not come out in the consultations because consultations had maintained the 20,000 shilling that was there. So you should take note that that is something that came on board. Someone was proposing that please reduce the fine to 200,000. We can't because it is in the Act. But I've already told you, we were already reviewing the Act, and one of the key areas that we need to look at is that particular provision. But I told you because of the rationalization, we had halted the processes. So we shall inform all of you when the process resumes, because we are going to further consult and ensure that, that you let us know. Do we maintain the 2 million? Is it something to do away with so that it is addressed? Someone was asking for a waiver, and also someone gave an example of what happened at the NGO Bureau. What's happening now is that, one, it is a requirement in the law that you need to pay the fine. But what we're also taking into concern are some of the things that Dr. James pointed out about the orphan. We are talking about our dangerous orphan. That at times, some of the reasons that an NGO delays is not their own making. It's because either they submitted an application, no one looked at it, and they spent months and months waiting for either someone to issue them a recommendation to come to the NGO Bureau. And also, they spent a lot of time waiting for a stakeholder either to sign an MOU with them. And also remember that what NGO Bureau has done as an enabler to help you become more compliant, what we have also done is we put a roadblock for you that if you want to apply for renewal, we also request you to first comply with other laws. Otherwise, if we do not do that for you, it means we are going to clear you, we are going to renew your permit, you are going to go and operate as if there's no problem, and yet at the end of the day, you're going to realize actually you did not register with FIA, you did not register with the Personal Data Protection Office, you did not register with any office that you're supposed to. You did not sign an MOU with the district. So what we do is that we make it a condition that please go and get these instruments and documents before we can actually serve you. So what we do is that if at all you have accumulated any fine, and you can show us evidence and justifications that there were reasons that were beyond your control, then we can consider. And what we do for these fines is that people have heavy fines. One, we can tell you, draw a payment plan within which you can actually appropriately pay over a period of time. But also, if we realize that it's because either your application delayed in someone's office and you had no control over it, then we treat you the same way we treated the example that was brought out here. We say, okay, much as we understand, at least it was not your fault, but there is this amount you can either pay, and that is considered. So the question was, how do we involve the sector on this fine? I've already told you, we are going to review this law. You need to start planning and also taking that into account. The question on the benefit, how do we benefit from that money? That money is paid in the consolidated fund. Anyone who has ever paid that fine, you did not give it to the bureau. It was in the consolidated fund, meaning that it is appropriated to all the government entities and whoever is being funded after appropriation from the parliament. So, and of course, for those who followed the discussions on the NGO bill, we had once at some point requested that they should give us opportunity to spend some of these funds at source, but it was totally rejected, and that meant that all monies should go to the consolidated fund. Let me just see the questions I can pick. On the issue of the access to the information that was raised about the concerns of non-network and how do we engage the NGO Bureau in such a circumstance. Right now, the main communicators at the NGO Bureau is the communications department. And right now, even within this meeting, we have the whole communications team. We try to ensure that their contacts are all put out there, and you can always reach out to them. And in case of anything, they will always reach out to you. For the concern that was raised that you are finding it hard to communicate to the Bureau, ensure that the NGO Bureau team takes note of that, because you said that for almost 1.5 years you have not received your permit. The communications team coordinates all that. I wanted to answer that together with what Peter said about how long it takes to get a permit. Under the NGO Act, if you go and read the provisions there, you'll find that the NGO Bureau is given 45 days within which to ensure that you get your permit. If you have not received your permit or your certificate within 45 days, then it means there's definitely a problem. And what we always do is that we ask the communications team to always communicate whatever is delaying it. But in case you have not received any communication, my request is that you always reach out to the NGO Bureau, mainly through the communications office, so that that is addressed. In most cases, you find that each time a query is even raised to an NGO, the period they take to respond to that query also has a bearing on how fast that query is responded to. Because if an NGO takes their own time to respond to a query, and it takes months to put together whatever is being asked for, then it definitely means that it will take a much longer time. There was another concern that there are no budgets to recruit compliance officers. Why don't we put people at districts? We hope that once the branch offices have been operationalized, then we shall have individuals at districts who can help with that. The issue of consulting the local governments on issues of timelines in terms of schedules for actually sitting, I think that's going to be a very core area for conversation during the consultations on the review of the policy and the act. We need to give clear timelines. It's unfortunate that when we developed and put in place these committees, writing the policy and the act, there was a total mission on issues of schedules, timelines, all that were left out. We hope that with this review, we can now do a thorough job and have clear timelines that actually penalizes whoever does not look at those applications within the time. The other question was in terms of CBOs. So many concerns are being raised about CBOs. Actually, the next quarterly dialogue meeting between the minister and the sector, we have dedicated it to CBOs. CBOs have got serious issues. As a country, we need to all sit and discuss it. And that means that I will not answer it so much right now, but I hope that the people in this room are present in that engagement. I don't know how many will get lucky to be present in the next, at the quarterly dialogue meeting with the Minister of Internal Affairs. That's going to be a meeting where we are going to bring, actually half the number is going to be people from the local governments. Meaning that even some of the questions being raised here, you're going to have so many cows in the room, so many RCCs, so many DCDOs. The right people can actually answer your question. But the main focus is going to be on CBOs. Why are CBOs a very big focus to us? Some of the reasons are raised here. That CBOs are supposed to be small entities that are operating at only a sub-county level. Meaning that they don't have the capacity to do so many things to the level of an NGO. But it has correctly come out here that a number of CBOs operating out there actually have the capacity to operate as a full NGO. But they are more comfortable there because either they are not directly within the docket of the Bureau, they are not required to register with FIA, they're not required to go to Personal Data Protection Office. So there's a reason why they are remaining there. So it's high time that we started to pay attention to CBOs. But also, we're also seeing that there are CBOs that are moving from sub-county level to county level to district level, then even districts. You may find a CBO from some, let me say, sub-county somewhere in Kitgum, is now operating almost in the entire north. But if you try to look at what they're using for the operation, it's strictly a registration to operate in one sub-county. So there's a lot to be done when it comes to CBOs. So I request that please let's discuss the issue of CBOs comprehensively at the next quarterly dialogue meeting. So soon you'll receive communications on when it's going to be. On the issue of the mandate of the parliament, in terms of how they're going to utilize this report, I had already given a commitment, even before it was asked, that once Dr. James produces the final report, we are going to use that report to strongly and comprehensively enrich the policy and the act that are being reviewed. All of you should take note that when you go to cabinet, they want you to attach evidence of consultations, evidence of documents you looked at. Those are some of the documents we are going to look at. Now, there are also other documents we are putting together, like FIA has told you, there was a risk assessment of the sector that was done. All these issues are things which we need to put together. So this report had already requested that the faster it moves, the better. If it takes long and the process resumes and is concluded before the final report is out, it becomes difficult. So I cannot authoritatively say that we have already picked all the issues. I am convinced that what Dr. James did was a summary. There are so many details that actually will be very informative to the cabinet and also to the parliament. So we just hope that they will help in the reforms and also help enrich the NGO policy and the act. On the issue of Minister of Gender, this has been a cry that has been there over and over again. It is something we are going to take up. But of course, I also wanted to give the rationale. Why do we have only an individual that is handling issues of recommendations? One thing is that in the line ministries, it's supposed to be a PS to recommend any organization. But what the PSs have done, they have identified a particular officer to handle this. Now, why are we sticking on a particular officer? It is because we want to minimize forgeries. A number of NGOs do not know, or even the people in this room, you do not know the level of forgeries we deal with. NGO Bureau encounters a lot of forgeries. I don't know about URSB or FIA, but I can tell you there are so many organizations forging letters. And so it is safer to ensure that there's one person doing that. But for the concerns raised over and over again, we are going to engage Minister of Gender and tell them their concerns being raised that can we at least have more individuals who can be available in case they're needed when it comes to the recommendation. There are so many concerns on the digitalization of the NGO Bureau. 3 years ago, we started pushing for digitalization of NGO Bureau, but it's unfortunate that we have not yet received the funding that we are hoping for. For those who have access to the ministerial policy statements that were submitted to Parliament, you will see that the first priority for NGO Bureau for next financial year is automation. We want to ensure that all these concerns are addressed, and automation is the main way it can be addressed. There are questions about why are so many regulators asking for so many documents. We hope that once the NGO Bureau, that is the main regulator when it comes to NGOs, once they're fully automated, its system can be integrated with other systems to save a lot of that hassle and also that hardship of having to submit documents in every office. And I can confidently tell you that once the Bureau is fully automated, then the Bureau can talk to its other sister entities and tell them, please, don't ask them for information, just access it from this angle and you'll have the same information that you're asking them to submit. So automation is our top priority next financial year. Let's hope the resources come. If they do not come, then it means that we shall further push it on ahead. On the issue of I think a number of them I have already answered. I think let me go to my parting shot so that I can really close. First of all, I want to thank everyone for at least being part of this, because I will tell you that for me, any opportunity that involves speaking to the sector and also listening to them, I think it's an opportunity that I don't let go, and that's why you'll see me in different forums and also around the country engaging the sector. But once again, I want to thank DPI for this particular exercise and request that please continue pushing for more funding so that this exercise goes. We should not have a one-off then next time we don't see one, because I can tell you having this exercise is a very important one. But also I want to thank Dr. James and his entire team that carried out this exercise. I only have one strong point I want to raise to Dr. James when it comes to the survey they're conducting, that the focus appears to be more on the regulators, because if you are cultivating trust, let that trust not be looking at the regulators only, at the government arm. I think let it start at the basic level. And this was my first point I raised today. Why people form NGOs, their motives, why they're running into trouble. I try to say something about that. How I would request Dr. James also includes in his survey, can you find out how many NGOs even know what is in their own internal governing documents? I will tell you that I have had the opportunity of chairing the committee at the NGO Bureau that handles complaints and resolves disputes. But I will tell you from all the engagements I've had, I can confidently tell you that to give a very fair number, 80% of NGOs in this country do not even know what is in their own internal governing documents. I have even said it's a fair number. Actually, I should have put it at 98. That if you picked any NGO, actually if Dr. James went and conducted a survey without giving people room to first go and hide in a corner and read what is in their own internal governing document, you're going to be shocked that the ED of that NGO does not even know what is in their internal governing documents. The board does not even know what is in their own internal governing documents. The members who are sitting in the NGO do not even know. Now, that is where the compliance starts. The basic level of how you can promote compliance. You are looking at the NGO Bureau, URSB and everyone. My request is that, I do not know if you want to conduct a separate one, but you should start with that basic level. If an NGO is not compliant with their own internal governing document, how do you expect them to be compliant with national laws of the country? So my humble request is that please go back and start there. Get us figures of how the compliance levels are. But of course, I've already told you from my interaction with NGOs, the situation is bad. People are hiring lawyers to develop these documents for them. People are hiring middlemen. People don't even participate. But when it comes to the time of registering, a lawyer will bring it to them. They'll just say, show me the part I should sign. They are going to subscribe to it and endorse it that that's their document, but they don't even know the content. Now, the moment you sit in a meeting, and by the way, for everyone in this room, each time we are handling a dispute or a complaint involving an NGO, before we even go to laws of this country, we start with your own internal governing document. We sit you down and say, okay, we have listened to this complaint, let's go to this article in your own constitution. And someone does not even have a clue of what we are talking about. Now, how do we even talk about capacity building at the national level or laws of the country when an NGO internally has people founded this NGO, people are working in this NGO, people are subscribing to this NGO, but they don't even have a clue. So I would request Dr. James that that's an arena that please look into it so that I do not know whether it will affect the amount of time you have. But overall, I want to conclude by saying it is very clear that handling issues of NGOs in this country is a shared responsibility. It is collective. You can see that's why I'm happy that all of us are seated here. I'm happy that in the afternoon, more stakeholders are going to be seated up here. And that shows you that you cannot look at the bill alone or even blame the bill alone. There is a long chain. And that's why Dr. James correctly put it, that if someone frustrates a process down there, you know that you are causing a bigger problem at another level. So it means that collectively, we need to holistically look at this compliance issue. It's not about the bureau, but it is the country as a whole, involving all the NGOs. I've already hinted that we are going to drag CBOs when it comes to compliance issues, and that is going to start from our next quarterly dialogue meeting. But overall, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Please hand clap for Stephen. Thank you for the effort you have made in responding to the questions and making this talk to your regulator really a talk to your regulator. Patricia, I know it's a tall order. Somebody here mentioned, very quickly, Patricia, what is the timeline for filing a resolution? That's the question to URSB. Then very quickly, Patricia, just one more. While the current laws require beneficial ownership registration, even for NGOs, URSB turns applicants to go back to the NGO Bureau under Section 34 of the Act, and even advises to reclaim registration fees from the URA. Why does URSB refuse to register INGOs, international NGOs, as branches of foreign companies under the Companies Act? Please clarify to resolve the gray area. Thank you, Patricia.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. We had a question on the postal address. It's currently in the law. So for now, and every company is required to have a physical address and postal address. Of course, we are alive to the fact of the technological developments all over the world. And together with Posta, they now have virtual addresses. And they're working on a project to have so that we can have an address of service. An address of service is not a postal address. It means they'll have to map out the country based on your location, so that if X company is located here, we'll say we are located at Serena, first floor, room this, that. And it can even be traced on GPS. So it's something ongoing. So in the interim, it still stays. There's someone who raised something from the banks. Unfortunately, you did not say what things. But we should be aware that banks are regulated by Bank of Uganda. So they have their know your client requirements. So unless we can have a chat after this and you tell me exactly what, that's when I can be able to guide. We work closely with the Uganda Bankers Association and Bank of Uganda. Stephen spoke about the awards. Of course, giving awards have a cost implication. and there's a budgetary constraint on that, but we take that feedback. And basically on name reservation, we got feedback on different issues. And for example, use of Uganda, Alan, it's not true that you're not allowed not to use Uganda. We have had NGOs that have Uganda in their name. As earlier said, I said that in the event that your name starts with Uganda or national, you need a recommendation from the line ministry. So that should actually, I hope it creates some clarity. Peter spoke about the simplified MEMATs. We are working on it actually, because the purpose of the one-pager was to simplify registration for our users. But of course, now we are aware that many people adopt these tables and they don't even know the content. So we are looking at having you able to download and have this whole table there so that you can see what you're complying with, and if there are any modifications, you're modifying it against what you're complying to, not blindly just sticking table C and you're not sure. There was an issue on the CBOs. Unfortunately, non-registration offers you no protection. So if you intend to operate a company, any of the types under the Companies Act, you're required to register. If you come at any one point and you're saying, I've been using this name for 10 years, it's against a register that the name is searched. So if there are issues of similarity and all, it won't pass. But of course now this is an area we need to engage Ministry of Local Government that is registering these CBOs on the legal implications of what they're doing, because you make someone comfortable thinking a legal entity and all this, and you go operating, yet the reality is you're not. We appreciate the feedback given. It's an opportunity. There was someone who spoke about the timelines and effectiveness of the system. It's an area we're working on. The whole purpose of going E is to simplify work and ensure turnaround time. So it's something we're working on. Our turnaround time is 8 working hours for whatever service or less. Now remember, it's Monday to Friday. So in the event that you submit your work on Friday at 6 p.m., please don't count the time. It will run on Monday because of the working hours. And then there's a question on the resolutions. Resolutions, they're different. If it's a special resolution, ordinary resolution by members, by shareholders, they must be registered within 30 days. That's where the penalty arises after, if you don't comply with that time. And also on the queries management, there's a lady who said, Judith, I think, who spent about 3 months. We appreciate that feedback, and it's an area for continued improvements from our teams. And then there was someone who said, if you're unable to operate, under the Companies Act, if you're not able to operate, you come and apply for dormancy. But it's before. You don't come after saying, you see, last year, I didn't have money, I didn't. If now we are going probably towards, let's say we're in December, and you realize that the funds are not coming in, you apply for dormancy. It means during that year, you're not required to file annual returns with us. And in the event that, let's say 3 months later, you're back on your feet and you think you will operate during that year, you can come forward. But if you go beyond 12 months, then you might opt for voluntary winding up of this company, since you're unable to operate. The annual returns, as Stephen mentioned, for us, all government, to be able to speak to each other, it means everyone has to be automated, so that whatever you file to us is accessed by the NGO Bureau, by URA, by NSSF. So until all government is automated, that might not happen. And then there was someone who said, mentioned something to do with LGBTI prostitution online. And it's very clear, a company is set up for a lawful purpose. So if there is any law that makes anything an offense, you cannot set up a company for that, unfortunately. And then international NGOs that go directly to the NGO board under Section 34. That came up in 2016. I think it's an area for discussion with NGO Bureau because what we register are branches here that come to set up, to do their business and all. And on beneficial ownership, it only applies to entities on our register. Once you're not on our register, we cannot take your information. And just to end, I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. Just to remind those whose companies were struck off last year, time is running up. As of 30th August this year, we shall begin the deregistration process. Once a company is deregistered, it means you will be taken off the register and your name will be available after 12 months to someone who wants it. So it's important that we avoid getting into that situation. And also for those who have not updated on our online business registration system, please do so that you can be able to operate from the comfort of your home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Please appreciate Patricia for the effort in responding, and we have taken heed of that information that you've given us around the company register. Yes, Lazarus, last but definitely not least.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. Briefly from me, I appreciate all the feedback we are receiving from the NGOs, and we take this as an opportunity to improve on our services. Most of the issues raised were comments, which we've taken note of. My team is behind there taking note, and we are going to take the necessary action. I'll just address myself to one or two issues only before I conclude. On the issue of awards, I think Patricia and Stephen have addressed it well, and I wish to associate myself to their submissions, so I'll not go into that. I'll only speak to the issue of capacity building raised by Alan, that we are focusing on building capacity of NGOs, but even regulators, we need to build capacity. This comment is spot on, and at least from the perspective of FIA, we take the issues of capacity building very seriously. Because like you may know, there's only one FIA in Uganda, so the people we recruit don't have experience from anywhere. So it's upon us to build their capacity from the onset, but also to sustain this capacity given the ever-evolving face of crime. So this is a spot-on comment, and we are cognizant of that fact. The last issue I want to address is how are we taking the findings of this report to foster reforms. The specific questions were about the laws. I think for us it is much broader. We've only seen provisional outcomes of the report. I think once the final report is issued, we shall be able to distill further into the findings which relate to FIA and see what necessary reforms we need to make to ensure that our services are better. I've seen from the preliminary findings that most of the reforms, fortunately, can be handled internally as FIA, issues of capacity, issues of perceived bias, issues of... So these don't require legal reforms, but just in case there's some level of detail which require legal reform, like Stephen said, this is evidence we can present in our quest to foster legal reforms as part of the consultations we've done with the stakeholders. Maybe to give you assurance, many of you may be aware that issues have been raised before about NGOs being accountable persons in the law. We've been responsive to that feedback, and we've taken steps, very firm steps, to recommend removal of the NGOs from the schedule of accountable persons. And I'm happy to report that the feedback I got as of this morning is that this request has progressed. Because you know the process of amending that second schedule originates from FIA, it goes to Minister of Finance, then Attorney General, and finally it is laid on Parliament. Lucky enough, it's not discussed, it's just laid on the floor of Parliament, and steps are in advanced stages of having that effected. So that is a demonstration that we are responsive to feedback that we get from you. So these talks to your regulator engagements are not just a ritual. They actually can have effective reforms. So on that note, I wish to appreciate all of you for the feedback we received from these engagements. Appreciate DPI, Yona and team for initiating this and sustaining them this far. And I urge you to continue with them because I think we are likely to cultivate more trust between us. Although, like Stephen said, that trust seemed to tilt on the side of the regulators. I need to emphasize that we also need to trust you as NGOs. And as we do dialogue, I'm sure this trust will develop further. And this eventually will ensure that we work together to create safe operating spaces for everyone. Thank you very much.
Panelists, thank you very, very, very much for that commitment. And thank you for the openness. And for sure, cultivating trust was such a relevant theme as we discussed today. So thank you very much. Again, please thank our panelists. I know you're hungry. They are too. Thank you, panelists. Come and we'll take a picture here. Come and take a picture of our panelists. Yona, come and give us one parting shot. We're going for lunch at the terrace. Pick a coupon. It's 2:15. Let's be back at 3. Do a marathon and leave at latest 4:30. Thank you very much. Please, panelists, come and take a picture here.
Thank you, our dear panelists. Mine is just a quick one. This is a journey we are walking. Dear panelists, don't leave us. We have very important engagement in the afternoon. But also key to it, we are building trust. We are cultivating trust. So we are going to integrate all the opinions here, share what we would call the management copy to the panelists for their internal reforms, but then also have a public version. What I did not specify in the morning is that we had both closed sessions and open sessions. So in the closed sessions, there were really very deeper dives where the regulators shared their concerns with us. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and there is no truth in us. So we also need to have a self-reflection as the sector. Thank you, and may God bless the lunch that we are going to have.
Amen. Thank you, Yona. Please have a nice, beautiful lunch. Let's be back at 3 on the dot. Our panelists will be ready, and whoever is in the room, we shall talk to the person in the room. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful lunch. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Lazarus. Thank you, Godwin, not here. And of course, thank you, Patricia, once again. Okay, let's go for lunch.